Are you thinking of moving to Maricopa, Casa Grande, Phoenix metro area, and you aren't sure if you want to rent or buy? This video is for you. My name's Mike Millet, and you're watching Living in Maricopa, where I cover all things Maricopa and the surrounding areas. In this video, I want to do something a little bit different, something that comes up pretty often. People unsure if it makes more sense for them to rent or buy. And depending on their situation, it could go either way. But I want to, take this opportunity to be as unbiased as I possibly can, to give you as much information as I possibly can. Now, it ended up being so much information, it doesn't all fit in one video. So there is another part to this, at least one more part, maybe 3 parts total. I don't know. We'll see. There will be words to tell you how many pieces I broke it up into and links to get you to the other portions of the video. But really, the thing is, it's a complicated decision and a complicated question, and I couldn't possibly cover everything, but I did try to, go through a lot of the different considerations to help you figure out if renting or buying in the immediate or long term is going to be better for your situation. But stick around until the end. The end of the last video in this series is going to have a portion, a calculator, a tool that I'm going to provide for you to use that will help you figure out the financial situations of your very specific situation to figure out if it makes more financial sense to rent or buy. You're not going to want to miss that. So stay tuned, enjoy the whole series, I hope, or jump around to the things that are most important to you. And I'm happy to have you here. Let's get going right now. So in my quest to be as unbiased as possible, I took to the public. I posted on Facebook in one of the local groups and, really asked for people's opinions on buying versus renting. Specifically, though, I wanted pro-renting opinions. I wanted to know why that makes sense for people, what the reasoning is, short-term versus long-term, just whatever the case is, why it makes sense for them. And, they came through for me. They gave me lots of opinions, and I just wanted to take a moment to glance at those and give you kind of an overview of what they say. I found it pretty interesting, although not necessarily surprising, that several people felt so strongly about the strengths of buying over renting that they spoke up, even though I was looking for the pros for renting. But that's still helpful. I really appreciate it, and I think it contributes to this. Now, I don't like to use ChatGPT for much. For me, it feels a bit disingenuous, but I thought it would be kind of easier to just feed these comments through ChatGPT and summarize them for me. And, it took a few tries, but let's see what it says. So ChatGPT summarizes the comments on renting with flexibility and less responsibility for repairs, for example, in military moves or post-divorce financial recovery, no HOA, maintenance, or home insurance costs, ideal for saving time and money, especially in high-cost areas. For example, renting until enough savings are built for a down payment. Now, keep in mind, those are people's opinions, not necessarily fact in all cases, because some of these things aren't usually an issue or are an issue. For example, when you're renting, a lot of times you still have to deal with the HOA if you're renting a home, for example. The last apartment complex I had, there was even an HOA payment, which really is how they covered the landscaping costs. They just passed it forward to the renters. For buying, people said it's a long-term investment for equity and wealth building. Mortgage payments can be cheaper than rent in some areas. You have control over property, like decorating, pets, no risk of eviction, and homeownership is a retirement strategy or something to leave for your children. Now, if you want to read the real comments or the full comments, then just rewind and pause for a moment. I'll be here when you get back. And let's just go ahead and move on to our first category today. Hey, real quick, do me a huge favor. Go ahead and pause the video and hit the like button on it, because that is so helpful to me. It makes a big difference, and it allows me to reach more people and help more people ultimately. And while you're at it, hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed, and the bell icon so that you'll get notified whenever I drop a new video, because I put out lots of content about Maricopa and the surrounding communities through Phoenix, Casa Grande, Chandler, Mesa, Gilbert. There's a lot in the pipeline that I am excited to share with you. So subscribe, bell icon, and let's keep going. So for the first category, let's talk about frequency of move. Now, to me, this is a big deal because I hate moving, and I think a lot of people do too, based off of what I see my clients go through when they're, moving into the new house. It's just a giant headache that takes days and sometimes weeks or even months to fully unpack your home. So in my mind, and maybe you disagree, but in my mind, moving more frequently is a bad thing. It's a stress. But I can see there being advantages to that. For example, some people might like the flexibility of it. Some people might consider it somewhat of an adventure to move to a new place frequently and enjoy their lives. Or sometimes you have to move frequently because you're in the military or your job necessitates it for one reason or another. There's lots of reasons to choose to move. Moving can also be expensive, depending on if you're doing the entire move yourself or if you're hiring movers, renting a truck, etc., etc. But I pulled up just a little bit of data we're just going to go through real quick. And you can search for this yourself on Redfin News about renters staying put longer with 1 in 6 now living in the same home for 10 years or more. And that's crazy to me. I've definitely seen it happen. As a renter most of my life, I ended up moving every 1 or 2 years, which really has always felt like too much. And in school, it was really hard because I couldn't really develop a friend circle, or which kind of carried through in some different ways. Whatever. With that said, as it states here, the lion's share of renters stay put for 1 to 4 years. Just over 2 in 5 stayed in their home for 1 to 4 years in 2022, up from 39.9 a decade earlier. So even with a lot more people staying 10 years, most are still moving every 1 to 4 years. And that's going to come into play when we look at the financial planning tool later. But for now, we'll just kind of keep that in mind. So now if we switch over to, this is actually an article by NAR, which is the National Association of Realtors. The article's a few years old, it's from 2020, but it still gives some pertinent information. And there's a lot of information here. This is publicly available, so you can look it up and read the full thing. We're going to skip through, well, actually, no, we're just going to focus on this part, that the median duration of home ownership in the U.S. is 13 years. That varies widely, of course, but 13 years as opposed to about 1 to 4 years. Now, keep in mind, in Phoenix, Arizona, which is roundabout where we are, we're just south of Phoenix, where we are about 30 minutes. The average is, or the median rather, is 8 years as opposed to 13. So people do move more frequently here as of right now, but in general, I think move times have, or length of living in a place is getting extended. It's getting longer at the moment because there's still a lot of people that have those really low interest rates from when I think we were getting around 3% in a lot of cases. So, but as a guideline, 1 to 4 years versus about 13 years. So next, let's talk customization. So you move to a place and you want to make it yours. What options do you have for that? So if you're renting, not very much, as you well know. Some rental places are okay with you repainting a wall to a different color, adding in some accents here and there, but generally speaking, they're going to require you to paint it back to how it was before. And they usually won't allow any other customizations. Some will allow some with prior written permission, so you have to ask permission first, and then if it's an improvement to the house, you'll have to leave it there. It becomes their property. So that kind of contributes to it's just easier to use, less to worry about, because you're not even thinking about what improvements, or if you do think about improvements to make, then you kind of just have to dismiss them or face some consequences later on. Because if you want to take down a wall and make a room bigger, or you want to change the cabinets, or replace a sliding glass door with something a little more elegant, you're probably out of luck with rentals unless you get prior written approval. Now, this is going to differ also a little bit between apartments and if you're renting a house. When it comes to buying, it's your house, so you have the option to kind of do whatever you want. You'll have to follow, safety codes, electrical codes, and things like that. Sometimes you can take down a wall. If there's a load-bearing wall in the way and you want it gone, you can generally do that. If you want to paint your house a different color, Well, that's a different thing if there's an HOA, because there can be some limitations on what you're allowed to alter in your in the front of your house. When it comes to the interior of your house, it's usually completely fair game. You want new cabinets, go for it. You want to remodel your kitchen, absolutely make it beautiful, make it yours. If you want to replace all your carpet with hardwood floors or with vinyl plank flooring, then absolutely. Now, obviously, the negative side of that is there is cost involved, in a lot of cases, significant cost involved. And if you're putting money into something like that in order to increase the value of the home, a lot of times it absolutely does increase the value of the home, but you got to be careful, because if you're doing the wrong things or you're putting too much money into it, it doesn't necessarily reflect in the value of the home. So you could spend $20,000 on a full kitchen remodel or a lot more, and it only increases the value of your home $10,000, which is not nothing. So make sure you're doing the improvements for yourself. When it comes to backyards of house, you typically have full reign too, although HOAs can kind of step in and say you can't add any structures that are over, say, 7 feet to where they're going to be an eyesore and visible over the wall. So, for example, in the previous houses and apartments that I rented, I never did any, adjustments, not deliberate ones anyway. Obviously there's the holes in the wall from putting pictures up, and never painted a wall, even though I could have. It just felt like too much of a hassle, as opposed to when we moved into our house here. The very first thing we did was we redid our kitchen, and made a lot of changes there. And since then we've, taken out our carpet and our tile on the bottom floor, vinyl plank flooring. We've done a lot with the backyard, though we still want to do a lot more. We put in a shed. We're adding grass in areas where there used to be rock. We're switching out some of the fruit trees for things that we prefer. Added in 2 large garden beds, and we're going to put more in. So anyway, just a lot more options for customization, not much for rentals. So I think when we consider customization, that kind of forces us to consider aspects like HOAs and landlords. So let's hit that next. So when it comes to landlords, when you're renting, landlords can be great. They can be helpful, thoughtful, considerate, patient. They can be all those things, or they can be kind of, the opposite. It's a little hit or miss, and I've had both, and I'm sure you have too. HOAs get a lot of guff. They get a lot of complaining, and don't ever move to a home that has an HOA in it. But if you're a renter, and you probably are if you're watching this video, let's be realistic. If you're a renter, then you've probably had some bad experiences with landlord. I think it's pretty common that people do have those bad experiences, unfortunately. And with landlords being able to have basically full jurisdiction in your home, and with 48 hours notice, they can come and walk through the home and see how you're living, make sure you're complying with the lease and pet policy and occupancy policy, and that you haven't damaged, that you haven't altered, etc., etc. It can be a lot. Usually they're not stopping by frequently, but there are some cases where landlords do tend to do that. Now, if you own a home, especially a newer one, there's a very good chance that you're dealing with an HOA. And part of that is because cities tend to require builders to establish HOAs when they're beginning a new community, because the HOAs help manage things, they help keep things in good condition, they help maintain area parks, and they cover a lot of the costs and the stress that cities would rather not have to deal with. So they offload them to the HOAs. So don't blame the builders for establishing HOAs when they open up new communities. But with that said, the nightmare stories of HOAs aren't always true. Like, we've been in an HOA home for over 5 years now, and we've had little things here and there, but we've not really had any problems. It's been good. The community wants to do good together, but there's always going to be those fringe cases and whatnot. So HOAs tend to have control over what you're allowed to do in your front yard, and also surrounding areas, parks and whatnot. In a lot of cases, they'll say what plants you're allowed to have, how many plants you're allowed to have, rock desert lawn or grass, or if you're allowed to extend your driveway to make it wider, or if you're allowed to paint your house, or what color your house is allowed to be, etc., etc. So they tend to have a lot of say over that, and that tends to be one of the biggest areas of their jurisdiction. But generally, if you want to make a change, whether it falls inside or outside of what they typically allow, the HOA will have a committee that you submit your plans to, and they approve or disapprove. So even if you want to make a change to how your home is, in a lot of cases, you'll be allowed to do that. And the same kind of goes for the backyard, except they usually are a lot more hands-off. You know, I've heard of HOAs flying drones over neighborhoods to make sure people don't have a lot of weeds in their backyards, which seems a little excessive to me. You know, that we haven't had anything crazy like that in our HOA that I'm aware of. But usually if something can't be seen past the fences, then it's no big deal. In my HOA, if something is 7 foot or higher, then you need to get permission from the HOA to be able to install it. If it's lower than that, then it's not, or it's not very visible over the wall. And so we just popped a shed up in our backyard, and no big deal. We installed some garden beds, some large garden beds in our backyard, and we're going to put in more. We changed some of the fruit trees up. We are putting more grass around. HOA doesn't give two craps about any of that stuff, so totally fine. And when it comes to the inside of your home, well, as long as you're not expanding, you know, the exterior walls, then you generally can do whatever you want. They tend to not have any jurisdiction or say about what you do to the inside of your home. And that's, of course, one major difference between a landlord and an HOA. Now, it's a little easy to overlook, I think, that if you are renting a home, then chances are you're dealing with a landlord and an HOA who is going to have the same kind of say over what you are allowed to do. And it's just extra layers of kind of people telling you what you can and can't do with the place you live. I don't mind the HOA too much because they're not actually invasive for us, but I just don't like layers. I like to be able to have as much control as possible over where I live. All right, my friends, I want to invite you, if you are planning to move to, you know, the Phoenix metro area, Maricopa, Casa Grande, Mesa, Tempe, Chandler, Gilbert, Scottsdale, any of these homes, or any of these cities rather, reach out to me. Let's connect. Let's have a nice Zoom conversation, get to know each other a little bit, and make sure we're a good fit together. I would love to really help you get things figured out to make this the smoothest move possible. And that's whether you're moving in the next 9 days or 9 months, whatever your time frame is, I would love to help you with that. All right, let's keep on chugging. Next category. Next, let's talk about utilities. And you know, when it comes to utilities for renting versus buying, it might be a little bit of a wash. It's pretty similar. In Arizona, at least, you're pretty much paying for all your utilities regardless. In some cases, landlords will, for renting, will lump in like water, trash, sewer with your rent. You're still paying for it, obviously, but it's lumped in at least. And there's not really any getting away from that. In some cases, you know, say in an apartment complex, they'll only have 1 meter for an entire building, and then they're taking the average, and so you're helping pay other people's water, or they're helping pay yours, whatever the case may be. And in owning, you are paying for all your own utilities, of course, with, you know, the caveat that as an owner, you can choose to install solar on your home, and that can, of course, help reduce your electric bill. Just be careful if you own and you are thinking about installing solar. It can cause a pain in the butt when you are trying to sell the home, and it usually doesn't actually increase the value no matter what the salesman tells you, unless you own the seller outright, okay? So keep that in mind. With that said, for utilities, it doesn't really lean one way or the other in buying versus renting, in my opinion. Next, let's talk about pets. And you probably already know how this one generally goes. With renting, there are very, very often severe limitations on what kind of pets you're allowed to have. You know, what kind, what breed, what size, what species. You know, some won't allow dogs at all, or a lot won't allow pets at all, of course, as you know. So that can be really difficult if you know, love this dog that you've had for 10 years and you don't want to just give it up for adoption to someone else because you're moving into a new house. So pet policies can be really restrictive with landlords, and they don't want their homes damaged because it's their investment and whatnot. Also, in almost every case when it comes to renting with a pet, you're of course paying money for it. You are paying a cleaning deposit and usually pet rent as well. And that can add up. It can be, you know, $50 per pet per month in a lot of cases, and, you know, $400 upfront pet deposit. Some just additional costs, and honestly, it is really just another revenue stream for your landlord. They're trying to make more money off of your pet, and that's even if they allow them at all. So pets can be just a little bit of an extra challenge with rentals. Now, when it comes to owning your own home, a lot of times you get to have whatever animals you want at the house. Things like horses, of course, are an exception. You have to have a large enough property, but that's more of a city ordinance type of thing. Some HOAs will restrict certain breeds that are considered dangerous. Some HOAs will, require maybe a small upfront cost because they'll actually do DNA testing for your pet, so that if you and your pet are leaving messes in people's yards or in parks, they can test it, and then they can track it down to you and your animal, and then have you fined for it. So there's kind of that to consider. And also, if you have a dog that's really loud and is disturbing people after hours, well, then you're probably going to get in trouble with the city, but you would also have those same problems as a renter. So that's just an animal pet thing in general. As a generality, though, you do have a lot more flexibility as a homeowner if you have pets or you want to get pets and make them a part of your life. One thing to keep in mind when you're renting, kind of like pets, you tend to have some limitations on occupancy. So you typically have to explain who is going to be staying on at the home, and have to have everyone's name. And anyone over, say, 18 has to pay an application fee and their credit score, and et cetera, et cetera. And if another person is found to be living there or staying beyond a certain amount of time, then you can be evicted or you can be charged extra. And it can cause some different struggles with, like, what if one person wants to move out and now the remaining person has to be able to qualify for the lease on their own, et cetera, et cetera. If you want to get out of the lease early, then you might be required to have someone take over the lease, or you'll be responsible for the payment of the remainder of the lease, et cetera, et cetera. When it comes to owning your own home, usually you don't have any such restrictions. You can have people move in with you if you so choose. You can grow your household. You can have visitors for extended period of times. And really, there's usually not many issues with who's living there. Now, some HOAs will restrict rentals, how you treat rental situations. So that can, affect the occupancy. Or age-restricted communities, like 55-plus communities, might have restrictions on having people under 18 live there. But generally speaking, you get to just have whoever you want live in a home that you own versus needing permission in a home that you rent. Okay, so you're living someplace and something goes wrong. It's probably going to happen whether you're renting or buying. It's unavoidable. What happens now? Who's responsible for it? Who pays for it? And this is generally seen as kind of an advantage of renters. Although I feel like it's a little misleading. But anyway, that's the perception, and a lot of people, and it was brought up multiple times in those Facebook comments. So typically, yes, when you're renting a home or an apartment and something goes wrong, you can call someone up and they will come out and fix it. And that's stuff like toilet leaking or making a mess, the roof leaking and making a mess, the oven breaks down and is no longer functioning, the air conditioning breaks down and is no longer functioning. And that can be a big one because air conditionings are cheap if you have to replace them. Repairs and maintenance can be fairly inexpensive in a lot of situations, but replacement is thousands of dollars. And that can feel like a lot. But if you're renting, the landlord is going to have to do it. And with something critical like that, in the middle of summer, for example, they can be legally responsible for replacing it quickly or getting it fixed and operational quickly, or putting it up in a hotel in some situations. And that gets into tenant laws, which is a whole different subject, but there's a lot of good resources for that. But maybe we'll talk about that some other time. Anyway, something goes wrong with the home or the place where you're living, the landlord is generally responsible for it. If that something going wrong damages your property, then you might be out of luck unless you have renter's insurance. So renter's insurance can be an extra expense. It's typically really affordable, though. I would say usually $30 or less. I had it for $11 when I last rented. And that'll help cover the costs of damage to your own personal property if something goes wrong, usually with a deductible, not always a small deductible. And a lot of landlords will require that you have renter's insurance and maintain proof of it being current. When it comes to owning and something goes wrong, things are significantly more complicated. Not necessarily more expensive in truth, but more complicated for sure. In buying a home and you get a loan to buy the home, lenders will require you to get homeowners insurance, and that of course is going to cost money. They collect the money through your mortgage payment or alongside your mortgage payment, and then they directly pay the insurer. So it's not generally a separate payment, but it is bringing up the cost of your monthly payment to the mortgage company. And that amount is going to vary based off of factors like location and value of home, but as a ballpark, we'll say $200 a month additional. And homeowners insurance is something that can and will go up over time. So even if your mortgage payment remains the same for 30 years, your insurance costs can go up. Now, why do you have it? It's so that if something catastrophic happens, you can pay a deductible, usually $500, $1,000, and the home insurance will pay for the complete repair of whatever happened, or up to and including the replacement of your house. So when they're determining how much you're paying per month for your home insurance, they're factoring in the cost of total replacement of your house. So it's pretty important to have, and lenders require it so that if something major goes wrong and you completely lose your house, you're not still having to make a mortgage payment and you don't have a home to make a mortgage payment on. A lot of people are going to just say, screw it, it's not worth it, I'm not making that mortgage payment anymore. And then the lender's losing money and you're without a home and it's just bad. So therefore, homeowners insurance is required so that everybody is protected at the cost of, paying extra on your mortgage. Now, in a lot of cases, things aren't so catastrophic, in which case having a home warranty can make a lot of sense. And we're talking a deductible of $50 to $100. So let's say your dishwasher goes out and it needs to be replaced. If you have a home warranty in place, which is not required, then the home warranty can help cover the cost of the replacement or repair. Sometimes the entire thing, sometimes partial. And same thing goes for a major system like air conditioning. If something goes wrong and it requires a major repair or even entire replacement, then a home warranty can really help reduce the cost of those repairs. Now, how they cover, what services they offer varies widely between home warranty companies because I don't think it's as tightly regulated and certainly not as required as home insurance. Another part about home warranty is when you're purchasing a home, in a lot of cases, if not most cases, you can get the seller to pay for the cost of a year home warranty because it's seen as a welcome to this used home gift. Since you're getting it in whatever shape I left it in, here's a little extra incentive to just help ease the burden of moving in and having to deal with already used appliances and other things. And home warranties typically cost, about $500 to $700 a year. And the home warranty cost can vary depending on, the value of the home, the size of the home, what extra things you have, like do you have a pool that you want covered, do you have a second fridge that you want to cover, etc., stuff like that. But when you are paying for your own home warranty, it can help spread out the cost of things when repairs are required inevitably. Now, one thing that a lot of renters don't consider that I think is important to factor in because it is important is that if you are renting, you are still paying for those repairs. You are still paying for the homeowner's insurance. It's all wrapped into your monthly rental payment. You don't see it separated necessarily in the same ways, but it's still there because the person who owns the home is trying to make a profit. And so they're going to factor in anticipated repair costs and still make a profit on top of that. So it's all in there. So if you're a homeowner and you're good at managing your money, you can save a significant amount of money over what a renter is paying. It just looks different, and so it can be deceptive, and it's easier to think about if you're renting because it's just more manageable that way. All right, my friends, that is all the room we have in this video. So we're going to go ahead and just cut it off right now. But there's going to be a follow-up, another part to it. So stay tuned for that. More information, more things to consider to help you decide if renting or buying is better for you. And again, the end is something you're not going to want to miss. It's a super useful tool to help you calculate what makes more financial sense for you. Thank you so much, and I will see you soon.